What's up, everybody? Citizen Kimberly here. Welcome back to the channel. Hope everybody's doing good today. And today we're going to be discussing Infinity Baby, directed by Bob Byington and screenplay by Honor Tuchel. So the story starts off with some groovy music, and we're introduced to one of our main characters, Ben, and he rushes into this coffee shop, and he sees a woman, and he's like, "Hi, Ava?" And we're introduced to Ava, and he pulls out a chair like he's about to sit down, but he doesn't. He just kind of stands there and looks at her and says, "So, how old are you?" And she says, "I'm 40 friendly." And he says, "Have you ever been married?" And she says, "Yes, I've been married before. Do you want to get married again? Do you want babies?" And she's like, "Can we just slow this down?" She's like, "Bruh, like, oh my God, like, what is this?" And he's giving her like the Robert De Niro face, and it's just kind of like, We're then introduced to the baby, who briefly narrates the introduction to the whole scenario that's being set up within the film, and we get a glimpse inside of the industrial type building, and we meet the dude who runs the business of selling babies that don't age. So Neo, aka the dude who runs the company, he's giving an interview to this really energetic guy who's like, "I want to be a part of the team. I want to be a part of something big." And he looks at the dude and he says, "What's the name of the shackles that were put around slaves' necks?" And the young man answers, "Blue collar." And Neo looks at him and is like, "Mm-hmm." Ben and his girlfriend are outside, and she's fidgeting. She's really anxious because she is about to meet Ben's mother. Ben reassures her. He's like, "You look really pretty. You look beautiful today." And he kisses her on the cheek. And this gives her that extra boost of confidence because she just knows she's going to win over his mother. And she's beginning to see stars and flowers, and she just knows that she's about to be accepted. And then we're introduced to Ben's mother, Hester. As she opens the door, she immediately gives Teresa the big old dish. So Hester begins to grill Teresa, and when I mean grill, she is giving her all of the 360 degrees that are needed to bake a pound cake. She begins to go in on her about her job, and Teresa's a florist. And she's like, "Gee, Teresa, you look like you should be teaching school, but yet you're a florist. And what kind of job is that?" And Teresa responds. She's like, "Well, I am a French literature major, and being a florist is just my job. I spent some time abroad." And then Hester cuts it, and she begins to address her in French. So Hester and Teresa begin to spa in French, and it is it is a gnarly conversation. And Teresa turns around to Ben and she's like, "Can you help me out here?" And Ben's like, What's going on? I have no idea what's going on. Everything is cool." And by the end of the conversation, Ben's like, "Oh, that was beautiful. It looks like you guys had a really great conversation." Larry and Malcolm work for Infinity Baby, and they're actually like new recruits. And we find out that Larry and Malcolm are also in a relationship with each other, yet Malcolm insists that he is not gay, he is pansexual. And the funny thing is, he doesn't even know what pansexual is. But they are delivering a baby to Lydia, and they walk down this long corridor holding the baby. And they arrive at Lydia's apartment, and she has a gorgeous apartment, and they're just like, "Wow." And so she invites them in, and she asks them if they would like anything to drink, and they sit on the couch with the baby, and she just kind of looks at them blankly. So Lydia is like, "Do you think that the baby would like it here?" And Larry and Malcolm are like, "Yeah, I think she'd love it here. Do you want to hold her?" And she's like, "No, I'm scared of babies." And Larry's like, "Surely that can't be the case if you filled out an application from the company for a baby." And she's like, actually, my brother is the one who filled out this application for me. He said it would be good for me because children change your life. And that's what everybody says, right? Once you have a kid, your whole life changes. And he thinks that it would be better if I would focus on someone else other than myself. So Larry and Malcolm just kind of look at each other like, oh, okay. And Lydia begins to kind of question. She's like, I really don't see the point in a baby that doesn't grow up into a sentient being. Like, what's the point in having a kid if it doesn't grow up into anything? And Larry and Malcolm's reply is to nurture it. And so they go through the steps that are needed to take care of this special baby that's genetically modified so that it doesn't grow up and it doesn't really need to eat and it doesn't need to poop except for once a week. And Larry and Malcolm explain that there are 2 sets of pills that extend to 3 months with this package that she gets with the baby. And you just need 1 pill to keep it from pooping every day. So the baby only poops once a week. And there's another pill that nourishes the baby. And so you give these pills to the baby every day. So Neo begins to explain what happened in the not so distant future. Apparently, in the not so distant future, the Republicans had abortion become illegal. And they were like, hey, to the Democrats, if you give us abortion, then we'll give you stem cell research. So the parent company started stem cell research on these babies, and there was a defect. So about 1,000 or so babies inherited this defect, which is that they don't age. And the parent company started Infinity Baby, and that's how Infinity Baby came into existence. So Lydia's like, what exactly does an Infinity Baby do? And Larry and Malcolm are still trying to explain to Lydia the ins and outs of taking care of this Infinity Baby. And she's kind of looking at them like, okay. And so they answer, it coos. And she's like, it coos. And they're like, yes, the sound of a cooing baby is very soothing. It's one of the most beautiful noises in the world. Even dogs, did you know that dogs are very therapeutic to have? And so the chances are that having an Infinity Baby cooing could actually increase her chances of healing. And she's just like, girl. Needless to say, Lydia gives Malcolm and Larry the big old disc. She's not trying to hear the nonsense of taking care of a baby that shackles you and keeps you bound within chains, and then the baby doesn't even grow up into a sentient being, so she's like, nah. So Malcolm and Larry found themselves walking down the corridor again and walking down the steps, and Larry says to Malcolm, hey, why don't we just keep the baby? And Malcolm is like, no way. And he's like, we can keep the baby and keep the money. And as a side note, also, when you take care of one of these Infinity Babies and take on that responsibility, you get $20,000. So Larry's like, let's just keep the check of $20,000 and keep the baby. And after a couple of months, we'll just tell him that she didn't want him and we took on the responsibility and nobody will know the difference and we get the money. And Malcolm is like, no way. Meanwhile, at yet another coffee shop, Ben meets a new date, and her name is Allison. And he is struck by her beauty. He's like, wow, you're really beautiful. And she's like, thank you. And he's like, I didn't really mean to start off like that, but it's just that you look better than you do in pictures. And then she giggles a little bit, and she's like, I already like you. Now, in my opinion, Allison seems like super cute, and Ben and Allison go through the motions of that whole first date introduction thing, which is brutal and grilling and uncomfortable and awkward. And I think that this particular part of the movie nails it completely. And Ben, after going through the motions of asking her about her job, and Allison's an interior decorator, and she talks about how she doesn't make that much money at doing it, and she's building her clientele step by step, and he's like, like kind of giving her the face like he's really interested. You've everybody has seen this face. Like, the air of, I'm really interested in what you're talking about, but that's really not what it is. So he interrupts her and he asks her, can I get you a coffee or a salad or something? I know you've been working all day. And she's like, yes, I'd like a water, I'd like a coffee and a water. And he looks at her and he has this face on like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, I'm not a waiter. And she giggles again and he kind of looks at her like, that's really not funny. So I'm getting the sense from him that he's like, I'm serious about this, but she's thinking it's part of that cute introduction. And here's where we get that whole gender boundary issue where guys are reading one thing and girls are reading another. So he gets up, he is in line to order the coffee and the water, and he looks over at her and there's this pause and he's like, look at her. She's already bossing me around. He's like, why does she laugh so much? Why does she reveal so much so early? Isn't there a little bit of desperation in that? And why does she have her phone? And she can't even sit for 2 seconds without picking up her phone. And then he's like, but she is cute though. And as he's looking at the waitress, he's all like, the waitress is like, can I help you? And he's like, yeah, give me a coffee and some waters. After they get it on, he's laying there and he's like, yeah, well, she laughs a bit much, but that's okay. I think she might be the one. I think I might marry her. And we'll see what happens after 2 months. And of course, 2 months later, he's lying in bed next to her and he's like, oh, get off of me. Must have space. Give me my leg. And she's like, oh, I love you. I love you, Ben. And he's like, you know what? I think it's time for you to meet my mother. It's just really important to me that you meet her. And she's like, oh my gosh, what if she doesn't like me? I'm so nervous. I don't know if I want to do it. And he's like, oh yes, it's time. It's time for you to go and meet my mother, because in order for us to move forward, we really have to, you have to get to know her and you have to get this approval. And she's like, but I love you, Ben. And it's really sad because this girl, Allison, is completely in love with him. And she, at this point, I said she was cute, but she's getting she's a bit much. She's doing the most and I'm a girl. And here is where I'm going to end my commentary and I'm going to go straight into my thoughts. Infinity Baby was released in 2017 and premiered at the South by Southwest Festival. And it stars Kieran Culkin. He plays one of the main characters, Ben. And you may know Kieran Culkin because he's, of course, one of the Culkin brothers. This script is really interesting because I feel like it's very mainstream and it blends a lot of ideas that are kind of socially going on at the current moment. Ideas like compromises between the two elective parties. I think it's really interesting how the Republicans exchanged abortion for stem cell research, and what an interesting mashup of ideas, and also the combination of relationship issues. One thing that was really cool about this movie was Ben's character. He actually reminds me of a friend of mine named Taryn. His mannerisms, his voice, everything. I don't know what happened to Taryn. Taryn's a cool dude. But we were really good buddies. And I guess Taryn's probably off like being an art professor somewhere. But shout out to Taryn. But those inner thoughts that keep racing through your mind. It's like, I'm really glad that this film kind of showed that, because that's something that I do. Like, say somebody's standing right in front of you and you're paying attention to them, but inside of your mind, there are all these thoughts. It's like you're siphoning in information and it's almost involuntary. Like you're just having, your thoughts are racing like around a track, and the other person may not even know what you're thinking unless maybe you give them a face, or but most of the time, you can it's like there are two processes going on. And it's like the person is totally cognizant of the fact that they are standing there and they have to maintain how they are, but in the back of their mind they're thinking something else. Like when I'm looking at somebody, I may take notice of how well formed their ears are, or how they have beautifully structured legs, or there's a space between one of their eyelashes. And that's the scary thing, because I'm like, if I do it, I know other people are doing it to me. But that's kind of the neat part of being human. And I think it's interesting how they broached the subject with kind of the issue of children, like why people want children, why people have children. I mean, personally, for me, I have no idea, what it's like to be a parent. Shout out for all the parents. And at one point, the main character, Ben, he keeps calling himself a coward. And it's like he would rather be called a coward than a bore, which is something he actually gets called later on in the film. As a side note, one of the worst things I feel like you could ever say to somebody, it's not necessarily like the B word or the A word or the C word. It's like bore. You're a bore. You're boring. Or you're marginal. Oh my God, that's like the worst thing you can say to someone. But back to the subject of kids. I love children. I think that they're great, but there's something very scary about having children. I mean, children take in so much information, i.e., like my example with Ben and the example with myself, how you're filtering in all of this information and you're processing, people's actions and behaviors. Think about what kids do. So that means that the way that a child is going to take in life or filter in life, they are going to mimic you. They're going to take in your emotions. They're going to take in your actions. And I just don't want to be responsible for potentially damaging a child psychologically for the rest of their life. I mean, that's really serious. And I'm not, I just can't do it. So in a way, I can understand why Ben's character, or Kieran Culkin's character, is like, I'm a coward. It is a very cowardly act to be scared of actually potentially ruining a child. Even though I feel like his excuse is that he doesn't want to be burdened. I don't personally think that children are a burden. I think that they're awesome. I mean, it's really weird. It's like, I really don't want to have children, number one, because, there's nobody to do that with currently in my life, but that's fine. I mean, that's another thing. It's like, that's another issue that I feel like this film touches on, the fact that people they wind up with certain people because they talk themselves into it. But in my head, I'm like, well, why would you have to talk yourself into wanting to share the same air and the same space with another person? I think that that's weird. And I don't think that you can force yourself to want to be with someone, because ultimately you'll wind up like running away, or the whole thing just seems like uncomfortable. I think that it takes a very, with each individual person, I feel like it takes a very special person for that person in order for them to share the same space. I don't think you can constantly be talking yourself into being with someone. In my head, I'm like, there's no point to that. I think that this film touches on that as well, which is really awesome. So if you're into a futuristic plot that kind of it combines, kind of moral questions and questions about what it's like to truly want to be in a relationship with someone, and what your real reasoning is behind wanting to have children. And like I said, I'm like, wow, man, children are awesome, and I feel like if you're in the correct space to have them, and you're willing to take on the responsibility of shaping an entire human being so that when they grow up, they know how to love themselves and how to love other people and how to take care of themselves and manage and not be a crappy person, then that is awesome. And I feel like this film definitely, it makes you laugh about these like little things, these little human quirks. And hopefully everybody has these quirks, and it's not just me. When people kind of address the fact that you might have voices, and not like psycho voices, but your little voice when you're like taking in information, it's like they either want to call it like, oh, you're crazy, or oh, that's weird for you to say that. But I'm glad that a film like this addresses it, because I got those things going on. Nobody ever talks about that. They always act like, oh, no, that's weird. But it's not weird. It's not weird at all. I'm glad this film put that in there. So if you like science fiction films and you like a little bit of comedy, then this film might make you currently think about your motives for having a family and, those kind of things. Then give this film a watch. I really liked it. I enjoyed it. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and also hit the subscribe button, and don't forget to share your thoughts and comment. Tell me what you think about this film, if you've seen it or not. And as always, until next time, if you're into it, watch it.